Twin Peaks The Gifted.
And
The Damned.
And
The Damned. And The Damned. A large house made of wood, surrounded by trees.
Welcome to Twin Peaks The Gifted.
And The Damned.
My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at FitandTrim. That's FITTENTRIM at FitandTrim on Twitter. And with me, as always, is somebody who releases books that read as Wikipedia pages.
That's what
it's
I do.
Mork. Mork, how you doing?
Oh, Bubba, I'm so good. I am so good. If you want to know how good, you can hit me up on Twitter at Extraordinary. That's extraordinary with a W in front of the final R.
That is a great Twitter handle. And Mork,
Well,
I
thank you.
imagine a lot of people have been writing in to compliment you on your interview with Twin Peaks star, Mount Rushmore character, Sarah
know.
Palmer, a.k.a. Grace Zabriskie. It was incredible. It was insightful. It was fun.
It was fun to do. I'm going to venture it was more fun to do than it was for you to edit.
Oh, my Lord.
But
Oh, my Lord.
it was great. It was great. And correct me if I'm wrong, we may have a little bit more
Oh, we are.
from that interview today.
Isn't that great? On today's podcast,
So cool.
we're going to have even more of your discussion with talented, lovely Grace Zabriskie.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
She is amazing, and she was very gracious. She was a double G, Gracious Grace,
Gracious
with
Grace.
her time. And we're going to have some more of that in today's podcast. But today, Mork, we've got to cover this book. It hasn't even been out 1 week. Mark Frost's new / final Twin Peaks book, Twin Peaks The Final Dossier. Hot off the presses. We're
So
going to
hot.
break it down like
Breaking it.
nobody breaks this book down.
Breaking in half. You know, you got to go actually shake hands with the master on Halloween night. Is that correct?
On Halloween
And
night.
that is not a euphemism. That's you actually went to the fantastic Romans bookstore. Let's give them a little
Pasadena,
shout out.
yeah.
In sunny Pasadena.
And Mark Frost was there. He
And who else?
read from the books, including the actor who portrayed
Your
effing
favorite?
Ray Monroe, George
Beautiful.
Griffith. I had him sign in this final dossier. There's a section on Ray, so I had him sign the section about him. Also there was, of course, Josh Fadham, who played Phil Bisbee, a.k.a. Getting Coffee for our boy Dougie Coop.
God bless.
We also had Lorraine, who
Sweet Lorraine.
spent the whole Twin Peaks The Return getting worse and worse news until finally Ike the Spike gave her the worst news of all, death.
Well, at that point, it was a bit of a relief.
The actress who played Cindy Knox was there. Also, everybody's favorite lovable character, Deputy Chad, was there.
Deputy Chad.
I had them all sign the book. Sabrina Sutherland, the producer of Twin Peaks The Return. Plus, she appeared on camera in the casino part where she'd be running around with buckets to fill once our boy...
How cool is that?
Mr. Jackpots hit it big. She was in there. So I had all these Twin Peaks actors sign the book, and we're going to be giving it away as a prize to listeners of Twin Peaks The Gifted and...
The Damned. I thought we were just giving it to Catfish, no? We're going to give it away.
Many listeners may not know Catfish is another host here on the Double P Podcast Network.
Just down the hall.
He appeared, we thought it'd be fun just for the very first episode of The Return to see if somebody could watch the very first episode of Twin Peaks The Return and not know Twin Peaks, see if they could still get into it.
Right.
That was an epic fail. That did not work out. Now, maybe other people
true.
could. Catfish could not.
Not.
But we're not going to give the book to him. We're going to give the
Good.
book to somebody I like to call a double L.
Double L.
That's what I like to call me alone. I alone like to call loyal listeners.
Oh, right.
And so we gave a loyal listener a copy of Mark Frost, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, autographed by Mark Frost and Amy Shields, the actress
Candy.
who played Candy.
Yeah.
But this book, this slight new novel, has so many more people who've signed it. This is a prize you ain't ever going to get anywhere else but here on Twin Peaks The Gifted
And The Damned.
podcast.
How does a double L...
Who?
Exactly. How does the double L enter themselves into this amazing contest in order to get such a cool prize?
Well, as we've said, promoting podcast, not fun. It's not fun to do. It's not easy to do.
Look, I told my mom. I told my neighbor.
Right.
What else do we got to do?
That's how we got those 3 downloads. And so...
Score.
We're asking our double L's, you guys listening, to help us promote it. So when we put out a tweet that says, new episode of Twin Peaks The Gifted.
And the Damned.
If you guys retweet it, that's one entry in to win this incredible prize.
Amazing.
And or we also post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. The word double, the single letter P, the word podcasts, plural, facebook.com/double P podcasts. You share that Facebook post when we note the new podcast is up. That's yet another entry to win. And let me say, yes, there's one grand prize where we have one copy of the Final Dossier signed by Mark Frost himself, plus all these actors. We also have a couple others just autographed by Mark Frost.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple listeners can win. From your double Fs.
Double Fs.
Friendly folks here at Double P Podcasts.
And just to clarify, these are signed by the actual Mark Frost who wrote the book, not just several people named Mark Frost who we met from the phone book.
Believe it or not, yes.
Okay, good. Just to clarify.
I really wish we had gone that extra mile, pulled out an old school phone book, then found someone actually named Mark Frost, driven to their place. Because we didn't do that, we're just lame. Lame.
Well, that we know. That we know. So, Bubba.
Yeah?
We left part 18.
We did.
With, I dare to say, more questions than we began part 1.
True, sure.
And we were looking forward to, at least I was looking forward to, solving some of these riddles.
Correct.
When the Final Dossier was released. Now that you have it, do you feel that things have been solved or just kind of tidied up?
Well, Mork, so our listeners know, today we are covering the Final Dossier only up to page 34.
No.
And I have only read up to page 34.
Me too.
So, initial impressions? Listeners who followed us all summer long know that I was not a huge fan of Twin Peaks The Return. I thought it had some moments of brilliance, but overall the 18-part experience left me really down on certain aspects of Twin Peaks. And I'll say in these first 34 pages, this is more of kind of the content I would like than The Return gave me. It still has some issues that I'll talk about, but 34 pages in, I'm relatively high on the Final Dossier. How about you? You've also only read the first 34 pages. Let's hear your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I'm conflicted because I agree on the one hand that I was certainly curious about a lot of what's being addressed in these initial pages. However, I feel like I would have preferred to see this stuff maybe dramatized a little bit, maybe have learned this stuff from watching some of the characters who we didn't get to spend too much time with. But in a weird way, because it's written through the lens of Agent Tammy Preston, who didn't, ultimately, she didn't really impress, I don't think, too many of us as a
viewing public.
Right, yeah, through parts 1 through 18 as a real crack investigator. So my expectations are not too high. So far they've been met, but I do want to get a bit of a sense of some of the, otherworldly undertakings. And I don't know if she's capable of doing that because she's in one dimension, in one reality, and so maybe she's not capable of that. But
following up on what you're saying, Mork, is right at the beginning of this book. The very first thing I note is that it's dated September 6th, 2017.
Yeah.
So in my own mind, I'm imagining, even though I don't really, off the top of my head, know the dates in which Twin Peaks The Return took place, but with that date, September 6th, 2017, in my mind it says, well, this should have happened after Twin Peaks The Return, a.k.a. this should have happened after Agent TP, Tammy Preston, saw a freaking tulpa.
Right.
After Agent TP theoretically saw everything that went down in Sheriff Frank Truman's office. So you would think she would be more open to what I would call a mystical world, a crazy world. But in these first 34 pages, that doesn't come across at all.
Right. And, I guess I was sort of looking at that and, we're sort of trained to look at anything that's definitive as, this is really going to mean something. However, after The Secret History, where things didn't always line up with what we had seen in the show, or in other Twin Peaks books that had come out, you can put some faith in it, but you want to take that stuff, the names and dates and things like that, with a little grain of salt. The show ended did it end on the 3rd of September? I can look it up. We can look it up in a second.
Oh, you mean the actual airing? Yes,
the actual airing was.
Yes, it did end at the very beginning of September. I have to be honest, I didn't pay close enough attention to tell you if the show took place, that final episode took place on September of 2017. But either way, Tammy Preston in this book is very, very dry. In the first book, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, because she wasn't really narrating it, she was more like coming in with comments. She could be sarcastic. She would give us these little asides that at least let us know kind of her personality a bit, that she was sarcastic, that she would make little jokes, that she would, in a written page, roll her eyes at some of the things she was reading that the archivist had put down. Mm-hmm. Maybe that is the way we know it's written after the television show, is that she's not giving any of that. She's more open to kind of anything. Did
it strike you as, now she files this thing on September 6th, the book didn't come out until October 31st. Does it strike you as it's a little lazy? Like, what took her so long to get to the printer?
Let's do this.
What was going on? Like, what was she up to?
Well, the Freedom of Information Act, we needed
okay. All right, that's fair.
Needed to get out so that these top secret classified documents could get to us listeners. Now, I just want to make a note. I keep mentioning September 6, 2017, that TP dates her letter to Gordon Cole. If you look at Twin Peaks: The Secret History, Gordon Cole gave her the infamous dossier, the infamous case, on August 4th of 2016. So theoretically, about 13 months have passed since she first got the dossier, which didn't tie into the show at all.
How many times do you think she had to watch the show? How many times did she rewatch?
Oh, boy. She gave it some rough ratings like I did. But then the episode she was in, she was like, oh, this is the greatest show ever.
It's pretty good. Now, it's written as very much, it's different, obviously, because this is all coming from her pen. There are some diaphanous, is that the term? Maybe not. I don't know. I just pulled that out of the air. But so the Secret History, which we've also got sitting right here, it's a collection. It's put together by the archivist, who we learned to be.
Well, it was Major Briggs, but it was also the original Dougie Milford.
And so they had collected, or Cole had collected it, presented it to Preston to review. And
sorry, hold on. So Gordon Cole had found it theoretically at a major crime scene. Based on the show, tend to believe that crime scene might have been the Ruth Davenport murder situation, but again, it never came up in the show.
Could it have been any place involving our boy Mr. C?
Yeah, no, it certainly could have, because the show kept that initial crime it was discovered at secret from Agent TP, so you're right. Theoretically, it could have been the Glass Box Lounge or some other unknown crime committed by Mr. C.
And definitely not, and it's been a while since I looked at it, definitely couldn't have been the listening post where Major Briggs...
Oh, no.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
One more initial impression is that I made a joke introducing you, Mork, that it's a bit like a Wikipedia page. There is a bit more color in it, but it's not poetry. No report to a boss would really be written this way. But at times it feels as dry as a note to a boss.
Yeah, no, it can be. Well, this is interesting. It's interesting you say that, because you're right. It's very dry in some sections, and it's also very familiar in other sections. One thing that caught my eye was she signs her name, Agent Tamara Preston, Blue Rose Task Force. So the Blue Rose is something that, I mean, you look at Fire Walk with Me. They wouldn't even tell, our boy
Sam
Stanley what that actually was. Within the FBI, it was so secretive, and now it's being. I assume there's just a big file cabinet in the FBI, and
it'd have to be in Gordon's office, and so few people are in the loop.
Right. So, well, it does this by sort of stamping that I'm on this task force. Does that? I mean, I don't know what you know about the FBI, but just sort of thinking out loud here. Does this mean that it's more of a public thing, or this is the final dossier and it's being buried in the basement for another 25 years?
I would go with the latter, also because it does feel so much like it was a passion project for Gordon that nobody else in the FBI might care about some of this information so far in the first 34 pages.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Well, I did, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I'm going to give it... Actually, Bubba, why don't you give me a rating?
Once again, I'm generally positive. I'm going to go 8 double C's out of 10.
Double C's?
Double C stands for characters closures.
Ah.
Asterisk, meaning we get some closure to Donna, we get some closure to Leo, we get some closure to Elaine and Harriet Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously not everybody. We're going to get to Audrey in a bit.
Sure.
But we do get some closure to characters who we didn't see at all in the return, to characters we didn't even talk about in the return. So, for finding out what happened to those characters, I'm going 8 out of 10 for these first 34 pages.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to give it 7 triple H's.
Triple H's?
Harrowing Haywards in hospitals.
Aww.
Lots of bad stuff going on in hospitals. The general hospital as well as mental hospitals. And the Hayward family, after some real soap opera-esque bombshells that went off in the end of season 2, where Donna figured out that her dad may not be her dad. That blew up that whole family.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, let's get to that in a second, because that was big. But let's get to Leo, and let's just start off with a question on everybody's tongue.
Lucky Leo.
Who killed Leo?
Well, it had to be Wyndham Earl.
Oh, come on. It had to be Mr. C. Now, we haven't read further, and I know there's a bit of this dossier about Wyndham Earl just based on a page title.
All right.
But I think it has to be Mr. C. Let's look. The shooter killed Leo from across the room with quote-unquote nifty marksmanship.
Okay.
We know Agent Cooper was great with a gun.
Right.
Wyndham Earl, we don't know. Theoretically, he could have. We also know that the shooter had, quote, set his feet bureau style. So once again, it's either Mr. C or it's Wyndham Earl. We haven't read further, so we don't know. I would just imagine Wyndham Earl never came out of what we would call the Black Lodge. So therefore, in my mind, it has to be Mr. C, a.k.a. Evil Cooper, who killed Leo. I have no idea why.
Yeah,
that seems to be the obvious solution to the clues we're given.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know why Mr. C would care.
Great point. Yeah,
that was a big. I assumed. When we last leave Leo, there's a string and some tarantulas over his head, and we assume that he's going out that way.
Tarantulas don't kill you, losers.
Actually, that's our boy. That's our boy. Rosenfield is still with us. We included the pathology report, which I've never seen a more insulting pathology report. But that's our Albert.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
God, but we missed that guy. So I would say if it's not Earl, I would guess it's more because of the marksmanship.
So you're saying for it to be Earl, that means Earl somehow got out of the Black Lodge.
He would have had to have doubled back after he left Leo the first time and gone back and just shot him.
Right, but I'm pretty sure the way that final episode appears, Earl and Annie have already gone into the Black Lodge, and there's a cut scene. It's just a brief instant of Leo holding the string in his teeth with the tarantulas above him. Yeah, so when you're saying he doubled back after he left the Red Room,
or before they left. I assume they drove. So he put Annie in the car and then went back and shot.
Right, but they still. Now, okay, I guess you're saying that we can't trust that last episode happened linearly because nothing in the return seemed to happen linearly. But in the old series, things did tend to happen linearly.
Right. I would guess I would put more money on Wyndham Earl getting rid of Leo than I would on Mr. C. However, the idea that it's not Wyndham Earl, I think, does actually make sense. So who else?
It's Mr. C. There's nobody else.
Well,
Leo did it. I'm sorry. Albert did it himself.
What?
Albert did it himself. He's like, take that, you.
He's like, look, you're probably going to die.
Right. He hates these hayseeds out in the country anyway, so he's like, I'll kill you.
I know the tarantulas aren't going to kill you, but you don't. So this is quicker. Trust me. This is a better way to go. Could it have been another lawman like a Truman? For example, who hated Leo probably and was just like, you know what, I'm going to take him out.
All those cut scenes from the original series. Harry, you really down about Josie? No, I'm just angry Leo's still alive.
Well, it feels okay. So
Listeners, we want you to tell us who shot Leo. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, facebook.com/double P podcast. Who shot Leo? Is Bubba, am I right, that it was evil Mr. C?
Okay.
Or
evil? Why is he evil? That guy's great.
Or
you saw what he did to Richard?
Is Mork right that somehow Wyndham Earl returned to finish the job on Leo? At some point in time, Wyndham Earl took out Leo. Now, of course, theoretically, at the end of this book, there could be an answer to this. So no spoilers. Don't spoil us.
Yeah, no spoilers. I got another wild card.
All right, sure.
Lucy could have killed Leo.
Right, and that's how she became good with a gun to later shoot Mr. C.
Leo was like, look, there's going to be an invention in a couple of years called the cell phone. And she's like, I don't want to hear about it. And
Lucy came back and said, revenge for Waldo.
Oh, poor Waldo.
Mork, always with the ideas that don't make any lick of sense. That's so good. All right.
Well, look, it's
how about this?
The question.
Leo did crystal meth. Now, we were both alive. We were kids. I wasn't involved in the drug scene too much, but do you think crystal meth was a big thing back in 89?
Well, isn't like crank and crystal meth all the same? Like crystal meth's like a better form of crank or vice versa. Like speed is all, it's all like truckers do that stuff.
Well, I guess I was wondering, and probably because
what's funny... truckers who are double L's or who are truckers, please let us know.
Pull the horn.
Pull the horn. Wait a minute. Now. Pull the horn now.
All right, so what I was going to say is because of this crystal meth thing, I was like, huh?
Yeah.
I did a very quick Google search, and it turns out crystal meth first got widespread use in the World War II, I believe it was, by soldiers trying to stay awake.
Yeah.
And sure, truckers might be using crystal meth. Mork, you may have solved it. You don't know who shot Leo.
No.
But you've solved why Leo was on crystal meth.
Yes, I did. Because he liked World War II.
All right, so continuing on with Albert's breakdown of Leo's quote-unquote autopsy, Albert says, who shot Leo the first time? And I'm thinking to myself, Albert, are you now doing slotty police work too? They know that Hank Jennings shot Leo. Hank Jennings was arrested for shooting Leo. Albert, you should have been able to easily figure that out. But instead... maybe for some reason Albert wrote this screed against everybody because he didn't want to ask the Twin Peaks Police Department at that moment. Okay, but theoretically, Hank was arrested for shooting Leo and breaking probation because Bobby and Shelly fingered him. Bobby specifically fingered him in season 2. So it just upset me that Albert wouldn't know that.
I think you're skipping a shooting. I think they're talking about Shelly shooting him with the .22.
Well, no. But specifically, they're talking about the bullet lodged in his spine. Shelly shot Leo, and it grazed his arm. Remember, he was wearing that bandage on his arm.
Right.
The one who shot Leo in the spine that kind of put him into his Frankenstein condition was Hank.
From behind. Gotcha.
I thought Hank shot him through the chest because he was chopping wood in the house.
No, he was going after Bobby.
Right, but in other words, Hank was outside, and so Hank didn't shoot him from behind. Hank shot him through the window in the chest, and then the bullet lodged in Leo's spine.
Yeah, we got to go watch it again.
Oh, my Lord.
We got to go watch it again.
Oh, my Lord.
But I would just, one thing about, I guess why I'm a little skeptical, did Hank carry a .22? Conclusion, this is an earlier injury from a different weapon from a .22, for which he'd been treated some weeks earlier. We're on.
Yeah, I see it. We've all the way gotten to page
4. It doesn't actually say.
Right. All right, look, let's move on from this. Let's jump from this and say, what do you think? We are in a time where people are talking about sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. And even though season 2 somehow found a way to make it cute, the fact that Albert says Gordon referred to Shelly Johnson as, quote, the girl I'd most like to take to prom. Ooh, awkward, Gordon.
I think. Well, I mean, it's funny you say that because Tammy Preston refers to some of Gordon's nieces, who are visiting him. So I think of all the things that Gordon's been up to, that could very well be beyond the margins. The Shelley Johnson thing seemed fairly innocent.
On the show, that's true. But when he says a girl I'd most like to go to prom with, Gordon, you're well past prom. Even in 1989, dude.
Well, he was held back a couple of years. That's all.
Final thing I have on the Leo section is Albert just totally dissing the town of Twin Peaks, which by this point in the series we thought he had grown to love.
Yeah,
do you think this rash of crime made him hate Twin Peaks again? What's going on?
I don't know. You would think that a rash of crime would make Albert have more respect for Twin Peaks.
It's more like Philly. I love it.
Yeah, like, these are my people. But yeah, it does seem a little bit out of character. This I have a hard time imagining, this Albert, telling Truman that he loves him.
Yeah.
So it is a little jarring. It's nice to get that pure acidic Albert back, but it felt a little out of place to me.
Now, let me say that why am I so positive? Why have I bothered to give it a rating of double C character closure? My feelings about the original series was that I grew to care about those characters and really care about what happened to them, even, quote-unquote, evil monster Leo, mainly because he had that, quote-unquote, little moment of redemption at the end where he first releases Major Briggs and then second tells Major Briggs, save Shelly.
Right.
So because of that, even I'm a bit like, poor Leo.
Right.
But the fact that it gives me this closure, good. I love it. I cared about those characters a lot. They didn't feel the need to return to Leo at all in the return. I cared. Next up is a dossier on the early part of Shelley's life, post Season 2. Spoiler
alert, it does say towards the end of her little folder that we're going to return to Shelley. So should we start Shelley now, or should we save it?
Let's do it. We're covering these 34 pages. We got to do it. Let's go.
All right, well, let's go.
So what did you think of this Shelley section?
Well, it does end up, as I just said a second ago, it ends up saying that, well, we're going to get back to this. A lot of what we're seeing in here, there's not a lot of stuff that I don't know. I mean, some of the dates, some of the timing between, the fact that she and Bobby were together before, she and Leo, that does change things a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I want to get to that if I could.
Go for it.
So we, in our coverage of the secret history of Twin Peaks, and to be honest, some of the listeners and readers more than us, occasionally would have problems when the secret history would contradict things we knew on the show or some of the other books in the Twin Peaks series.
Yeah.
This, the Final Dossier, this is the first moment where it starts to drive me crazy because the Final Dossier contradicts the secret history. Okay, there's a line here where it says, Bobby and Shelly, they've known each other since elementary school. And I read that and I went, what?
Right.
Because the secret history specifically says the Briggs moved to Twin Peaks in 1982.
Right.
That would have put Bobby 11, more like middle school, not elementary school. Now, maybe Twin Peaks didn't have such a thing as a middle school. It went straight to elementary, and so somehow in 11, you're in what grade are you in when you're 11? You're in 5th, 6th?
Yeah, 6th grade, yeah. 5th or 6th.
All right, maybe it was still elementary school, but still, it's like, come on.
Well, and that makes it sound like they were, friends from like kindergarten on, as opposed to much, much later. But it does change the tenor of their little fling a little bit.
It also contradicts the story we know from The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, which has no mention of some of this Bobby seeing Shelly until much later in the book.
Right.
Because that book really makes Laura, as someone who's observant and knows all, it just feels a bit odd, that moment, like, I don't know about that. But I will say that post-Season 2, life was good for a little bit for Shelly and Bobby. It was exciting. It was happy, She's 21 years old. She's married to the man she loves. They have a child. They have a new house. Even though Bobby's father had passed away, it seemed like they had two good kind of surrogate parents in Bobby's mother, Betty, and Norma. And so it's all good. It's heartbreaking where it'll go, quote unquote, the second act of this life. But I was happy that they had moments of happiness, since so many other characters didn't have moments of happiness.
No, it's a great place to start, but we're gonna circle back to per Tammy Preston. We're circling back to Shelley, and we're gonna get a little bit more out of it. So here we get to some pretty much only sad and depressing stuff.
Yeah, once we get to the double H's.
Double H's?
Hornes and Haywards.
Yeah.
The book really does, as you're saying. Suddenly.
Quadruple H's.
Quadruple H's.
Yes. Hornes, Haywards, hospitals, all harrowing.
Yeah, it is tough. It is one of these things where I, as a reader, and as somebody who's going to go on and rate it on a podcast, I kind of have to fight this thing about it's giving me the closure, it's giving me the information which the return didn't give me that I wanted, so I like that.
Yeah.
And yet it's also turning in a way that I don't like. So should I downgrade the story because it's going in a place I don't like? Or appreciate the story is going in a new, unique way. And so I just want to get to this. The Hornes and the Haywards. What did you think about this post the night where Ben comes to the Hayward's house? Mm-hmm. How did you feel about that for the Haywards? The Haywards were the model family. And to see them dissolve, that's tough.
That's dissolving is...
a kind way
people
to say
drift apart. I mean, they exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, they went to completely the three of them, and they all except for the younger sisters, but Donna, Mrs. Hayward, Doc Hayward, they all very quickly live in completely different parts of three different states.
Yes.
Very quickly, and Donna never speaks to her mom again. And
that is crazy.
Which is crazy.
That is crazy.
And it feels like this is the kind of thing that the Haywards, as we knew them, could have sort of talked it through and dealt with it. And you saw what Doc Hayward was to so many people. I don't know why Donna would be so mad at him. I mean, he was... Yes,
well, he did lie to her whole life.
Right, but...
And this is coming on the heels. So what you're getting at, Mork, sorry to cut you off.
Come
What you're getting at is, I think, the biggest question we have, in that is this section, the Haywards and Hornes, as well as the next section on Donna Hayward, is Donna behaving, quote-unquote, in character for as we knew her in season 1 and 2? I think in some ways you would think no. I guess what I would give the flip side to that is that this is somebody who, in a very short time frame, lost her best friend to a horrific murder, found out her best friend was murdered in a horrific way by her best friend's father, who she knew and kind of liked and all this stuff. Then her boyfriend cheats on her with a lookalike. Then her boyfriend cheats on her with some crazy
woman. Who looks
woman,
like her best friend.
some woman out of town. Then she finds out, oh, wait, my parents lied to me. So if Donna's behavior post this blow-up doesn't seem in character, in some ways I would say, well, maybe I could understand it for somebody who would live through such craziness.
But yeah, see, for me, I mean, for me, it doesn't track. I think that if she hadn't lived through all those really traumatic things and this happened, I could see it being a much bigger deal. But you find out this family secret, and the reason why her dad is lying to her seems pretty straightforward to me. I was lying to you about this because your mother wanted me to.
Way to throw Eileen Hayward. She's already been in a car accident.
Yeah.
Mork, now you're throwing her under the bus.
Absolutely.
Oh, mean. M, mean Mork.
What's he supposed to do? If obviously Eileen didn't want to share the news, so he's going to be like, look, your mom doesn't want me to tell you this, but I'm not your actual...
Oh, my God.
So I think he does have, you can call it an excuse, but he has a good reason, okay? So, but in light of what we've seen, right? We've seen kidnapping in the weeks and months preceding this discovery. We've seen kidnapping, torture, child abuse of the worst kind.
Not to any of these characters.
No. But this is what's going on in the town, in this bucolic town, and in light of that, this doesn't seem like it's the worst thing ever. That's all I'm saying.
Donna, put it in perspective.
Yeah, I think so. It's it is pretty awful. But remind me for a second, was she 17 or 18 when this all went down?
Yeah, these dates get real crazy.
Right.
Laura was 17, we know.
Yeah.
She was a senior in high school, 17. Donna, I would have to go to the trading cards, which said her birthday. I would assume, just because she was played by an actress much older than this, I would assume, let's say 18 at the oldest. You're 18 years old and all these crazy things happen. I think you could blow up your life. possibly. That said, she stayed in town. It wasn't like she left town immediately. This happens on like the end of March. So she stays through the end of the school year and does graduate from Twin Peaks High. So somehow she does this and still keeps her anger enough to abandon her family.
So she abandons them.
So before we get to kind of Donna's post-graduation world, I want to get to just this section that's entitled The Haywards and the Hornes. In that, Agent TP, there were all these jokes people made about Agent TP, find out who the archivist is, find out who the archivist is. Mm-hmm. Agent TP, if you just flipped to the back, you would have known who the archivist was. In this, Agent TP realizes that something funny went down at the Hayward house. Mm-hmm. But Agent TP never looks at Donna's birth certificate. Remember, on Donna's birth certificate, there was no name for the father.
Right.
And yet, Agent TP did do that for Richard Horne's birth certificate when we later get to the Audrey Horne. So, Agent TP, you're just driving me crazy. I want to give it up to Will Hayward and Ben Horne about the great cover story they came up with for Ben's injury.
Right.
I thought that if you have to tell the cops something, that's pretty good. It's in this section, though, that we get, once again, the final hit that Mr. C raped Audrey.
Yeah.
Mr. C, if we're going with my scenario, then also killed Leo. And Mr. C, this goes back to the secret history, Mr. C seems to have killed Major Briggs.
Oh, he
what a jerk.
What a jerk. No, he is a jerk, 100%. Absolutely 100%. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what other things. I mean, she was there, and what other things that we're going to learn about Mr. C and his dealings, and we're starting to get. I mean, one thing that and feel free to cut me off if you don't want to get to this right now. But one of the things that jumped out to me that the Audrey stuff was interesting and it was illuminating. But the thing that jumped out to me that I wish the return would have gotten into, and it didn't seem to cover it at all, but the fact that Ben sold Ghostwood, and it became a private prison, and so for me, and this is one of the things that I've been bellyaching about is that changed somewhat in whether it's Secret History or The Return or now even a little bit the Final Dossier, but it's just the idea of on the surface there's this beautiful peaceful town of Twin Peaks, but as we say, there's darkness in these woods. So now we actually have a private prison where
a real darkness, and it's no longer pretty. It's an ugly prison,
which is not even considered to be like, oh yeah, sure, it's a for-profit prison, but it's a really good place to work. There's great benefits.
It's not a great place to work.
There's nothing good or redeeming about this thing. So this thing is in the woods. This thing is the owls can get in whenever they want. It's a perfect breeding ground. For Garmonbozia. All this pain and suffering is right there in the woods where we don't want it, but where Bob would feel so at home, and we don't see any of it. There's nothing. We don't even learn about it until just now. I found that to be a little odd and kind of disappointing.
Well, we're jumping ahead a bit, so let's go ahead and just touch on the prison right now before we get back to the Haywards and Donna Hayward and all this. And say that, okay, one of the things, and this goes back to the infamous third book about Twin Peaks, the official book that came out entitled The Access Guide to Twin Peaks. Part of the quote-unquote plans for Season 3 way back when was that a prison was going to move to Twin Peaks. They were going to open up a prison in that area. And it's mentioned in the Access Guide to Twin Peaks, and I almost felt like this was Frost. He's had certain ideas, he's held on to them forever. And one of those ideas they talked about for Season 3 is a prison opening there. And so it felt like it just came in. Do you have an idea which group, if any, would own this prison?
Not the Norwegians.
The Midwest evil group that owns it? Yeah, not the Norwegians.
No.
What does it
South
have to...
Dakota? Our boys from South Dakota?
What does it have to do with Mr. Strawberry, since Warden Murphy's tied to it?
Yeah, Warden Murphy, who we met later on in Buckhorn, or...
No, he was in the other side.
Other part of the state.
Yeah.
Who started his career there, I guess. Yeah, no, I don't know who that group would be. Do you think they own any high-end real estate in Manhattan with a big glass box?
Mr. C apparently made a lot of money.
Yeah.
He had that nice place down in South America when he was dealing the drugs. So Mr. C, one way to get rich in this country, and it does feel like Frost. If you read interviews with him, you listen to interviews with him, he did want to put some American decay in The Return, and it feels like it's popping up here in his novels as well. He says in an interview that one of the reasons why Vegas was a location in The Return is because of that boom and bust that happened, the real estate boom and bust, and all those abandoned suburban homes that were built that didn't have anything happen to them. And so that seems to be why that was in The Return. Here in the United States, private prisons and the growth of the prison industry, you'd almost call it, the prison complex, is something big that he'd want to touch upon. Again, we've only read 34 pages into this. There's a chance all the listeners who finished this very short book are like, what's wrong with you guys? Don't you know the answer is certainly 10
page
pages
35.
away? Right?
It's on page 35. No, that could be. But, that's one of those nuggets where it's a little frustrating because that's an area where I feel like, okay, this is a perfect excuse to stay in, these dark, mystical, dangerous woods instead of going, all over the place. But, okay, I have a feeling that this prison and some of the goings-on there may come back.
They might,
in the rest of the
Or it might not. We're flying blind here.
I really don't know, but let's talk a little bit more about the Haywards.
Well, one Hayward got out of this story okay, and that is middle daughter, poetry lover Harriet. Harriet turned out to be okay. All the others I feel really terrible for. I grew to care about them. I would say maybe that's why I'm rating this book so high, even though it keeps breaking my heart with what happens to these characters, is, I'll say it, the original 2 series made me care for all these characters. Even Harriet, who only appeared in 2 episodes. I liked her, and so I want something good to happen to her. I wonder if, say, in a year from now, we had a book about all the Return characters, if I would be drawn to it as much. Like, here are characters I loved. I loved the Mitchum brothers, but if I read a book a year from now that said, okay, the Mitchums suddenly fell on hard times and the Silver Mustang went out of business and all this stuff.
Right. Burned it down again.
Right.
No insurance claim this time.
Right. Would it hurt as much as seeing what happened to Eileen Hayward, Doc Hayward, as some of this stuff does?
Yeah. We touched on this a little bit in previous podcasts, but yeah, I think there are very few new characters to the Return who had the same impact as some of our friends from seasons 1 and 2. Doesn't mean that they weren't compelling and interesting and all that, but I don't know if we'd be pouring over footnotes of what happened to the Mitchum brothers.
And I like the Mitchum brothers. I love Candy, but because it felt like they didn't almost even have their own story. Yeah,
they were. I think from day one. Mr. C. Well, not Mr. C. But Dougie Coop. He obviously, it wasn't really his character that was changing, but it was, or developing, but it was really just his being. But the Mitchum brothers were basically always the Mitchum brothers. They did want to kill him, but then they found out, oh, he's actually giving us a check for $30 million, which seems pretty. That's a good reason to like somebody, So I didn't get a sense of they were really. They went from bad guys to good guys, but they were still pretty much always who they were from the first time we saw them.
Maybe it's just the fact that I've been with these characters for so long. I've been with them for 25 years. So once again, Harriet was only in 2 episodes of the original series. And yet I really am glad she turned out okay.
Right.
Where we spent more actual time with the Mitchum brothers, I guess I wouldn't care if they didn't turn out okay.
Right.
And I love you, Mitchum brothers. All right, but let's get back to the Haywards who had their trials. Let me ask you a question.
All right.
Why did Donna never seemingly contact James ever again? Now, James did cheat on her.
Good kid, James.
He did cheat on her. He was emotionally cheating with Maddie Ferguson. But, when he goes off and gets busy when he's...
Sure. They were in high school.
Yeah, but no, not the woman he fooled around with.
Well, we don't know if she ever graduated. Evelyn Marsh, not known for her education. No,
why would you think Donna never contacted James?
I think that she wanted to get away from everything, and sadly, and she does go on. The book says she does go on to reconcile with her dad, and
that's good. Yeah, that was nice.
And became a nurse, and which is great. But she left it all behind. She never wanted. I just assumed it was too painful for her to revisit anything. Which
she doesn't even come because if you follow the timeline, her younger sister Gersten falls into trouble.
Yeah,
and she doesn't come back home for that.
Yeah, and neither does Doc Hayward.
That is a great point.
Right.
If Doc Hayward, okay, you had this trouble. But if Doc Hayward is the actual father of Harriet and Gersten, shouldn't he come back a lot? Shouldn't he have been there for these kids rather than moving so far away?
I would assume so. Yeah. I mean, I hope author Mark Frost isn't trying to throw any shade at the great Warren Frost, who played Doc Hayward.
This is tough. Poor Doc Hayward moving all the way across the country.
Yeah, I don't know why. I am assuming that the younger two girls are his children, as opposed to Ben or Jerry Horne's. But we haven't read the Jerry Horne section, so who knows?
We don't know yet.
We don't know where this is going, people. Give us a break.
Let me say that a couple times reading this section here on Donna Hayward, I was getting a little, is he taking from actual Laura Flynn Boyle's life on some of this stuff? Specifically where it's Donna marries a man 20 years older than her. Now, Laura Flynn Boyle, in real life, dated Jack Nicholson, who was more than 20 years older than her. That's the rumor that they dated. And so,
they for sure dated.
And so, is this the real-life actress doing something to the character? Wow, that was my thought on that and some of the other things that happen in this.
I mean, it does bring up the question of, like, gosh, is Mark Frost still mad about about Laura Flynn Boyle basically saying, no, Cooper can't have a romance with Audrey Horne because I'm dating him in real life. And he's still pissed off about it, and he's still paying her back to this day.
I don't think he's still mad because she has an okay final answer, final life. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem that she's had children yet, and at her age, you wouldn't assume she could still have kids, or it'd be tough. But she does get to reconnect with her dad, and so right. I was glad about that.
Yeah, no, that's nice, but, you know.
Well, who I call her dad. That's funny. I call it reconnects with her dad. Reconnects with Doc Hayward, who really is her dad, even if he's not her biological dad.
Yeah, he definitely, he definitely is. And, that is one thing that, sort of thinking about it now, watching The Return and watching Ben, you never got the sense. I never wondered to myself, gee, I wonder if he's going to reach out to Donna and check.
He apparently left some money, $7,500 a month.
That's not bad,
right?
Yeah, I mean, in those days, $7,500 a month back then.
No, that's really good. That's really good.
That's amazing. Well done, Ben Horne.
But
that's why he had to sell Ghostwood for the prison.
We say that, but quote unquote, we don't know what the settlement was between Doc and Eileen Hayward. Here she is, a divorced woman in a wheelchair raising 3 daughters. Mm-hmm. That would be financially tough. So,
well, they can handle it. But $7,500 definitely comes in handy.
Anything else you want to say about Donna and her closure, for lack of a better word?
No, I mean, other than it's when we, like Ben Horne or Jerry Horne, I mean, a lot of the characters, obviously Sarah Palmer, a lot of the characters who lived through it 25 years ago and came back, I mean, everyone seemed to be in a worse place. So, and she seems to be a little bit better, but, not, she's definitely carrying some scars around still. So
in this folder of information entitled Donna Hayward, it actually ends going back to Gersten Hayward, which ties us to Becky and everybody. So it again makes me wonder when this is theoretically written. I'm going by that date 2017, September 6, 2017. But the end of this chapter entitled Donna Hayward, it mentions that Stephen Burnett, a.k.a. Becky's husband, Stephen, has gone missing. Gone missing? I thought he blew his brains out not far from the trailer park.
Yeah, but maybe they just didn't report it. I mean
what if the Mark Frost character, Cyril Pons, walked right by him?
Well, he didn't want to run afoul of the law. I don't know. That doesn't actually make any sense at all.
Maybe Gersten picked up his body and carried it off somewhere. Maybe somehow he didn't shoot himself and they ran off together because Gersten has gone missing. And let me say that watching The Return, the impression I got, even though it certainly never came out and said it, the impression I got based on how Cyril Pons and Carl Rodd looked over to Becky and Steve's trailer, the impression I got was maybe Stephen had killed Becky. Mm-hmm. But then to this chapter implies that Becky is still alive. So good. In fact, it says, Deputy Sheriff Bobby Brigg appears to have spared Becky any lasting legal trouble. So I would think Becky didn't die in any way.
Deputy Bobby helped out his daughter? Is that what she's saying?
Well, the fact that she doesn't say, Stephen disappeared shortly after they found the body of Becky Briggs.
No. Yeah. So I'm assuming. But she knows that that's Bobby's daughter, though, right?
Right.
It's kind of weirdly put, I think. That's all.
That's true.
Kind of how I talk.
It's not that bad. Come on. All right, let's get to the final section. So many double L's who watched The Return.
L's.
Loyal listeners who watched The Return. They see a section entitled Ben and Audrey Horne. And they suddenly think, okay, great. This is going to get it. This is going to give us exactly the closure that we didn't get. And it immediately tells you, nothing would please my longing for narrative closure more than to report about blah, 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 blah. Pretty much telling us you're not getting any closure on this. So we got closure on Donna, on Eileen, on Harriet, theoretically on Gersten. She vanished after this trouble went down. On Leo, we're not getting closure in any way on Audrey. People may love because you can speculate and wonder or leave it open for season 4. How did you feel about the non-closure we get with Audrey, Mork?
Well, it's tough. I think it's one of those. I think reading this little section here and having watched what we saw and how things ended, where it seemed like Audrey was stuck in a very odd place, and the scenes were very heightened in an odd way, and then ultimately she ends up at the Roadhouse, which is great. But then smash cut, and she's in some kind of very sterile environment. We don't know where it is. We don't know what it is. Anything, which is unsettling. Then we read what we read here, and I kind of wish it was one or the other. There's something about both that it makes it worse to me somehow in terms of, and you give me hope. I don't know if there is going to be a season 4.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is going to be a season. Sorry about that. I don't know if there is going to be a season 4, but it does seem like this is job 1 to get right. It kind of feels like this is here just to sort of twist the knife a little bit.
Oh.
I mean,
knife twisting.
It's pretty miserable, don't you think?
To be honest, I don't see it twisting the knife. I just see it repeating exactly what the show did. Meaning, you want closure, you want answers, you want anything, you get nothing. I would say that parts of this chapter that I enjoy, Ben and Sylvia getting divorced. This is so funny. They should have gotten divorced. That's actually good news. Another thing that jumps out as me as a slightly odd is that it talks about Johnny having autism. Now, what's odd about that is that in the show, in admittedly a scene that was scripted but a cut scene, Dr. Jacoby told Sylvia Horne that Johnny's problem was emotional. It wasn't anything else. There was this story about, Audrey pushed Johnny down the stairs, but then it was like, no. So the idea was that he was not autistic, but here in this report, Agent Tammy Preston says that he is autistic. Another slightly odd thing about this is she says Johnny is in his early 40s, but Johnny was older than Audrey, so he should be not in his early 40s, he should be 50 or older if it's 25 years later. Agent TP, terrible detective.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Johnny could have been, if Johnny was a year older, and then, so he would have been 19, and then, so 43, 44.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure the show, again, this might have been a cut scene. The show implied, I think this was a cut line from the original scripts of the original series.
It
said
like
Johnny
26.
was 25. Yeah, 25 or 26.
Still in the third grade or something like that.
Right.
I think Audrey said that.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. So yeah, he should be older. He should be older than that. I mean, I love some of what we learn about Audrey. I mean, I love the idea of her basically saying to her dad, "You know what? I'm good on my own. I don't need your help anymore." I love the fact that the little spoiled brat who used to kind of wield all of the power that came with her last name on everyone who crossed her path. She goes to community college. She opens up a beauty salon. Great.
This was theoretically the original idea that they were going to have, and still actually may have been part of the show, is that when they did season 3, it was like, okay, Audrey, you're running this beauty salon. And Sherilyn Fenn complained. And so Lynch beefed up her part. We don't know how different it became or how different it changed to. But the original idea, in recent interviews, they've come out and said that, yeah, Audrey was going to be running a hair salon. It also, call me crazy, is this one of the few times that, once again, we get it stated as fact that Richard was Audrey's son? Because the show hit around that. I don't know if they said it clearly.
No, well, referring to Sylvia and Ben as his grandparents. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. It definitely defines how he came to be.
Once again, Mr. C. There's no thought, not even from Audrey, that this could be John Justice Wheeler's child?
Well, I always thought because Richard was so mean and devious that it clearly was John Joseph Wheeler's child. But unfortunately, it seems, in one thing that we haven't really touched on so far is just there's this timeline that doesn't really track that Tammy Preston. This really is sort of like the one original piece of police work that she seems to be doing, is where she does this timeline, these 9 points that include how did Ben Horne get clunked on the head, and some of the similarities and weird goings on that happened in this time period, right after Cooper originally disappeared and then reappeared and then disappeared again, and that's an area that I hope later on in the book gets fleshed out a little bit more, because I think for all of us that's what the real central mystery that remains is still connected to. It's really awful. What I mean is what Preston alleges, and that seems to totally track in terms of what happened. She seems, but the fact is, Audrey kept a picture of
Agent Cooper
Cooper on her office wall all these years. So some very complicated, conflicted feelings, to say the least. What did she know about Cooper versus Mr. C? Who knows? That would certainly drive somebody insane. But it's what's not clear in these pages is, okay, so what was it that led her? It talks about some sort of financial need for her to marry Charlie, her accountant.
We assume the accountant is Charlie. It never says the name Charlie in the book as the accountant. But if you put 2 and 2 together, you would assume that Charlie was this accountant that Audrey married for money, correct?
I thought they referred to him as, I thought he mentions being an accountant or something like that in the return. Okay. I think that. I might be just making that up, because I do that sometimes. But so why did they do that, number one? And then what made her agoraphobic?
Harold Smith. She's like Harold Smith, afraid to go outside, apparently, is what people are rumoring.
Right. She's either afraid to go outside or she's in an institution. So, and
how can Agent TP how can Tammy Preston not find out the answer to that? It drives me batty.
Yeah, that's a great call. That's a great call. You would think she could make make the rounds a little bit and get to the bottom of that. Yeah, I don't know. So what do you think that event was? This is about 4 years ago. So what do you think that could have been that, basically put her away, whether it's, in her basement or anywhere else in her beautiful home?
Well, she would have married the accountant. And once again, if Charlie's the accountant, she would have married him in about 1999. Mm-hmm. And so, 4 years ago, I'd almost have to go to the secret history to see if there's something in there, because I can't think of anything. What can you think?
I don't think there's anything in the secret history about it. I don't think there is. So
there may be more in this book, admittedly.
Yeah. So we're not all the way done. So any of these questions are going to be solved on page 36. We apologize for, but we're hoping that you guys are enjoying us, wonder about this stuff as you're reading this, and are taking a little break from reading.
Anything else you want to say about these first 34 pages, Mork?
It's when I first read it, I like them more now, having sort of bantered and batted them, some of these theories, back and forth with you. I do wonder, why didn't they do anything with the prison? Stuff like that shoehorned in it just kind of feels like a cheat, which is not satisfying. So things like that, I'm looking forward to more of original investigative work, a la these 9 points that didn't really track. I'd like to see more of that moving forward, and less of, oh, by the way, there was a private prison built in our backyard.
One thing I wondered about is that there was all this talk that the original book Frost was going to put out was going to be titled The Secret Lives of Twin Peaks. And then it became The Secret History of Twin Peaks. And part of me, while reading these first 34 pages, was wondering, did he remove these from the original book because, quote unquote, they were spoilers for the new season? Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, I was thinking, well, if you weren't going to have Leo in the new season, why wouldn't you put this stuff, like the Leo stuff, into the secret history? If you weren't really going to have Donna, why not put that into the book? It wouldn't have spoiled the show in any way, from my thinking. It's only these mentions about Audrey that kind of would have spoiled where she was, and admittedly Gersten. Otherwise, I think you could have put all of this in the secret history. So the part of me wonders why he held back.
Yeah, no, it's. I don't know. I mean, I think my feeling is that by the time we get to the end of the book, we're going to have to go watch The Return again.
Oh, no.
And then look at the books again. And then by then, we'll probably find out that, yes, there will be a season 4. So lots to look forward to here.
All right, listeners. So we've covered the first 34 pages of the book. In our next breakdown, we are going to go all the way up to page 90. So stop before you read the Margaret Coulson, a.k.a. Log Lady section of the book. That means we're going from Jerry Horne, who's on page 35, all the way up to the end of the section entitled Dr. Lawrence Jacoby. We're going to cover that on our next podcast. So,
Dr. Amp returns.
I'm sure you guys have probably finished the book. It's certainly a quick read, but in the comment section on YouTube, on our Facebook page, let's keep it spoiler-free until we get up to page 90, if that's okay.
That sounds great. Now, we do have, as we promised before, we do have an extra treat for you.
Hell yeah.
And, we were sort of talking about, Bubba, how, there's something very matter-of-fact about these pages. It almost feels like it could be from, Twin Peaksopedia or something. And so it'd be nice that after we've waded through and tried to process all of this prose, that, hey, maybe a little poetry would do us some good. So guess what we have, Bubba?
Prose?
No.
Oh, we have the wonderful, the double G gracious Grace Zabriskie reading some poems that she has. This all got started. How did you get down this tangent in your conversation, Mork?
So we were talking about, she was so wonderful and hospitable. She gave me a tour of her beautiful home, which has this amazing woodworking. I mean, it's like a woodworking shop. It's not like a small room. It's almost like a house, and it's full of the biggest, meanest, loudest tools. She's got a whole vacuum system going. It was so cool. And on her website, she makes mention to, she's got some pictures of a lot of her really beautiful woodwork that she's done over the years. And so I was asking her, well, do you want to talk about that a little bit on the website? She said, well, we can talk about that, or we can talk about this. And she pulled out a book that said Grace Zabriskie Poems. And,
hell yeah.
And she was kind enough to read a couple of the poems herself. And one of them is very day-to-day, and another one is a little bit more ethereal, and a lot of Twin Peaks watchers, and definitely our double L's.
Double L's.
Loyal listeners will get the connection. I believe in both of them, so please enjoy. Do you want to tell any of our listeners about, if you're not aware of some of your work as a sculptor and in woodworking, about some of that?
I can show you my poetry.
Oh, would you honor us with a poem?
Really?
Yeah, if you want.
Oh, Queen of the Waste Stream. Joan Edwards is my hero. She is the new Director of Integrated Solid Waste Management in Los Angeles, and she makes me feel better about Integrated Solid Waste Management in Los Angeles, now that she's the director of it. Joan Edwards was in New York before, where she figured out what to do about their garbage, and now she's here, figuring out what to do about ours. Ours is tougher, she says, and I'm really glad. We're tougher than you, New York, and so is our garbage. Joan, the ways I have felt about garbage up until now are, in chronological order: 1, no way at all, really, nothing. 2, guilty and resentfully guilty. 3, existentially hopeless. You are my hero, Joan, because you have made me feel less hopeless. Is it possible that there could be a correlation between attitudes toward garbage and attitudes toward life? Oh, Joan, how could there not be? Joan Edwards has guessed that glass can be used in asphalt instead of sand and stone. New Yorkers are already driving over their old Yoo-hoo bottles, crack vials, broken bud vases, pickle jars, and perfume stoppers. She has to come up with a lot more of these ideas and then talk people into using them. She has to talk people into buying garbage, which is done all the time, of course, but labeling's so important, and Joan won't really have that going for her until it catches on, of course, and I think it will. Still, my first dream about the waste stream, as she calls it, was a nightmare. I was drowning in this mighty river of shit, which is partly why I really wish the LA Times wouldn't call Joan the Waste Queen. And why I worry about Joan's dreams. I do. And I have other worries, like, if Joan picks up all the empty bottles, what then will be the use of homeless people and drug addicts and other unneeded, poor but slightly enterprising children? And what about this Joan? What about people who need their garbage, who save it in case they need it, but really so they can watch it and walk through it or talk to it or just sense it there in the closets every day? Will they feel free to keep on doing this? Feel free to contribute very little to the waste stream, really, until they die? Will you then, and only then, go on in and feed the cats and sort it all out for them into 2 room-sized bundles for recycling day? One small bathroom-sized bundle of metal, glass, and plastic containers, and one medium bedroom-sized bundle of newspapers, magazines, and corrugated boxes, and another pile, a bundle already smaller, tied with twine, which say, "Congratulations, Alice Bundy, you have just won $2 million. And, Alice Bundy, we want you in our club. And you are being sent a new El Dorado, Alice Bundy, so read further."
That was amazing. That was fantastic. I would applaud, but
I haven't tried to read it out loud in a while.
Is that something you wrote recently or a while back?
This is probably at least 10 years old, maybe older.
And I don't know much about sanitation in Los Angeles. Was that about when Joan was made the queen, or?
Well, there was a piece in the paper, about there being someone in L.A. who had worked in New York, and she was figuring out what to do about our garbage, basically.
Right.
And so that was that was.
You wrote it when you saw the article. You didn't wait a few years to see how the trash was doing before.
Oh, no.
Deciding to honor her with a poem.
I think I started it pretty soon. Shall I read a much shorter one?
You can do whatever you like. I thought that was fantastic. But please.
In and out of the dream. In this dream, I've been dreaming of you. Rich, satisfying dreams, seemingly devoid of symbolism. We are talking, sitting close together at a table. Near you, resting on the table, lies my arm. The part of it that begins at the elbow, ends at the wrist, and then my hand is there. Everything's normal. My arm is attached to me in the normal fashion, at the shoulder. Magically, though, there is no cigarette. I am not smoking, nor are you. This, I see now, is odd. You place your hand upon my arm, then your face down next to your hand, partly resting on it, all the warm weight of your hand and your head on my arm. You don't look up at me. In these dreams, the intimacy of this has been too much dreamed of. For a moment, I can't breathe. I put my face down next to yours, barely touching. We breathe each other's air. We barely smile. I don't know whether you are comforting me or asking to be comforted. For in this dream I know you feel the weight of all the dreams of you being dreamed. And now as I dream too, you come to me. Why? To share the burden? To gloat? No one dreams of me. I'm free. Were it not for you, I'd float.
That was beautiful. It was beautiful, and particularly in combination with, one of the major questions of the return in seasons 1 and 2 is, who is the dreamer? And yet another answer for us to ponder.
I've always believed that when people talk about David's work being about dreams, I don't think that's quite right. In my mind, it has something to do with the dreaming of dreams, and layers into that, as opposed to just, this is just like a dream. The scene is just like a dream.
Sure.
It's never that.
The poem feels like it was inspired by a very personal, it's a very personal story, but the idea of dreams and layers of dreams, is that something that, whether it's obviously it's in your poetry, but in terms of other acting work or some of your sculpture, does that come to play often?
Dreams? No, not so much. What comes into play with my work, all of it, is the idea of being able to know when I'm coming from the right place, and that I can trust whatever comes to me, and I'll figure it out later. Mm-hmm. Don't have to know now what it means or where it goes.
Sure. No, well, I think oftentimes it's how some of the time that is how magic things happen. So
yeah,
and you've definitely given us many, many, many of those moments. So thank you so much for that.
Man, that last poem about dreams, that's it, man.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. That is the poetry that envelopes this series.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it is funny. The grass really is always greener, because like during the show, you're like, during the return, you're like, oh God, just give me a goddamn answer about something. And then we get to the Final Dossier, and it's, hey, can we do this in maybe a little bit more open-ended, imaginative fashion? So we're getting it both, just not at the same time. And I'm enjoying it, and this has been fun. And we should do this. We should do this again soon. What do you think, Bubba?
Yeah, that's right. People read the whole book, but in our next podcast, we're discussing up to page 90 of the book. Get your questions and comments for the first 90 pages to us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, facebook.com/double P podcast. Get them in, because we want you guys to join us on this journey through the Final Dossier. Possibly, let's get our tears ready.
Oh,
possibly
no.
the last bit of Twin Peaks we'll ever get.
I'm pretending I didn't hear that at all.
Good. For everybody here on the Double P Podcast Network, my name is Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
And this is Mork. You can hit me up at Extraordinary on Twitter. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the final R. And we will see you soon on Twin Peaks, The Gifted, The Gifted, The Gifted, The Gifted, The Gifted,